Hey, I'm Julie, and here's the thing no one tells you at leadership offsites. You've built the career, you've read the books, you probably coach other people doing this stuff as well, right? You know exactly what you should do at the next level. But when the moment comes, the conversation, the decisions, the opportunity, you pull back. And underneath all that capacity, there's a quiet question you don't say out loud. Is this really for me? Now, that gap between what you're capable of and what actually allow yourself to have, it's not a knowledge gap and it's not a skills gap. It's an identity gap, and it was built long before you started this career. So what we're going to be talking about today is really about the identity gap, but why we can be capable and we can be accomplished people, but there's still something that holds us back. And it's about finding that question and exposing it. So what's your invisible ceiling? What's stopping you from being the best version that you should be and you deserve to be? So let's look at what shows up most weeks for you. You over prepare for a meeting that you know that you're qualified to run, done it loads of times. It's not a tricky subject, but there's something underneath that you're still trying to prove. You're trying to prove that you belong in that room. Now, this might come out as you saying yes to things. This might be maybe you should say no, but you said yes again. And then you resent the things that you said. You resent the commitments that you've made. And then you start getting annoyed with yourself, right? And then as a result of that, you can't sleep. And maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're scanning what went on today. Did you get it wrong? Why did you say that? Why did you do that? And then just over repeats itself over and over again in your mind. Now, this might surprise you to know that this isn't a confidence problem. Why? Because you've got decades of experience. You've got loads of evidence that shows that you can do this, but something just doesn't stick. Why? So let's have a look at what's happening in that identity gap. Now, there's a version of you that already knows what to do. It knows what to do at the next level. You've done the training, you passed the exams, you've done whatever it is, you've got the experience. The gap isn't just information. The gap is that somewhere underneath all of that, there's a version of you that still doesn't believe it's really for you, right? Now, this bit's important, and not many people tell you this, right? That's not a mindset block. And that mindset block, you can't think your way out of. Why? Because that's an identity issue. And that identity lives in your body in an automatic reaction in patterns that were set long before you had a say in the matter. And we talk about this a lot, right? Going back to your identity, where most of this happens, even at point of conception, but even before you're born, even before you're 7 or 8 years of age. Okay. Remember, this isn't always about just what goes on at work in your career, whatever that career is. This is also everything that happens in your personal life. It's about relationships. It's about relationships with yourself and foremost, but relationship with others as well. Your wife, your partner, your husband, your parents, your children, relationships with people at work. It impacts everything. But the core of it is here in your identity. So when you fix the identity, you fix all these other things as well, right? That's the good thing about it. You don't fix one thing and it just solves a problem in one area. It solves the problem in multiple areas. So let's unpack this a little bit more for you. So here's what happened before you had a say in the matter, as we said. You learned something about your worth. Maybe you learned from people around you, from what got praised and what got ignored, from what felt safe and what felt dangerous, from the beliefs, maybe of your caregivers. Maybe it's your cultural thing, maybe it's an environmental thing, or maybe it's all of those things. And somewhere in there, you picked up a lesson that most high performers carry without even realizing, and that is your worth is negotiable. Now, that is something you earn, something you prove. That's something that can be taken away even if you get it wrong. Now, that lesson didn't stay as a child, it shows up now. It didn't just stay there back then, right? If it did, it would be so much easier, wouldn't it? If these patterns and things happened back here and stayed there, then we could get on with our lives, but they don't. And why? Because that identity is stored in our body, right? They're memories, and the physical memories in particular that are attached to those. But the beliefs that you create about yourself back here, they're the beliefs that you're believing over here, which is why we have to get to the root of where they come from. So then can we upgrade your identity so that this bit brings up to date. So if your belief over here is I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I am good enough, I am worthy. So therefore I can do whatever it is I'm trying to do. Does that make sense? Now, there's different things and different roles that we can actually pick up when we're young. So let's use an example for a moment of a child, let's say is the responsible one. So in some families, children become emotionally responsible far too early. Right now, that might be because you might have witnessed something like maybe your mum was always overwhelmed. She was always stressed. And maybe you decided that perhaps she might not be able to cope with anything more, right? Maybe dad was emotionally unavailable. He didn't do cuddling. He didn't say he loved you. He did, but he just didn't say it. But emotionally, he would do anything to avoid actually dealing with any emotions, right? Now, maybe that created tension in the house because mum's overwhelmed and she's stressed, and maybe she needed dad's support, but he doesn't know how to, right? Now, bearing in mind, they're all dealing with their own identity issues, right? And the same way their parents were and so forth. So it becomes like a domino effect, right? So what we have to do is, kind of accept that each parent is dealing with the life in the best way they know how. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that they may not have been taught that they need how to be emotionally available, right? So if their parents weren't emotionally available, that's learned behavior and that just follows the pattern. And this is where this becomes quite scary in a way, I suppose, because if we continue to ignore what's going on in our lives, then we're actually creating these identities, these limiting beliefs in our own children and any other one that we're having an influence on their lives too. So the sooner we can start becoming aware of this information, aware that our identity is running our show and we're actually teaching that to others along the way. So just think about that domino effect. So maybe you're the one that needs to make that change and start stopping that domino in its tracks, right? So it doesn't carry on in the way that he's been doing in the past, right? Because children learn, right? They learn from what they see, they learn from what they feel. And as I say, they create those beliefs, right? So they might have created a belief that they don't want to add to the problem. So child's come down, right? Maybe something not very nice has happened at school. They really want to talk about it, but they can see mum's, she's stressed, she's anxious, she's trying to get dinner done. She's like, and you sense that now's not the right time. And you know that dad's not really available anyway, right? So you might go, well, do you know what? I don't really want to add to their problems. I'll just keep the peace. I'll stay away. I'll just try and hold it together for myself, right? Now that child grows up into an adult who carries everything, the one everyone relies on, the one who struggles to receive help, the one who looks strong while secretly exhausted. And maybe that example resonates with you. But can you see how when we're that younger versions of ourselves, we're creating beliefs like, mum can't help me right now, but maybe mum could have helped you right now. In fact, maybe she might have been really pleased actually to have the distraction and it might have changed her state. She might have been able to go, do you know what? Yeah, what is it, mate? What can I help you with? We don't know because that child never gave that parent the opportunity. Or maybe that parent has reacted badly before and maybe that child thought, do you know what? I'm not going to keep doing that. But he created a belief and maybe some physical feelings around it as well that I just need to hold this myself. And that just becomes their pattern. That's their subconscious programming. So you can understand how it came about. Maybe you can see it clearly and you can still find yourself doing it because, as we said, insight doesn't change your identity. So knowing this stuff and knowing that that's why you do what you do is great. It's great insight. But if it hasn't changed your subconscious wiring, hasn't changed your subconscious identity, then unfortunately it's going to carry on playing out. So here's the loop that most high performers are stuck in without really realizing it. Okay. Maybe you feel like something is missing. Maybe you kind of feel that you're not quite enough, like you need to do more, prove more, be more. So you go looking for evidence that you are good enough, evidence that you do belong, evidence that you've earned your place. Now, here's the problem. You're looking for evidence of something that was never missing. Your worth isn't a question to answer. It's not something you find. It's something that exists because you exist. But when your identity was built on that belief that worth is earned, you keep searching, you keep proving, you keep tolerating things that contradict what you actually value because somewhere you learned that what you have to do is to be acceptable, right? So this is why you have 20 years of success, for example, but there's still something that you're hiding from, this imposter, always that feeling that you're going to be found out. So let's learn this new world. Let's learn that We can change our identity. We can be the versions that we deserve to be. Where have you been looking for evidence for something that was never missing? What part of your life can you think that you've been constantly on this wheel of trying to evidence it? I mean, is there a people pleaser? Is there an imposter? What is it for you that you can recognize now as you're listening and watching to this episode? So here's what I want you to do with this. We're going to look at a question. All right. And I want you to ask yourself this week. And again, as with all my strategies, log them down. This is a question that's really, really powerful. Where in my life am I acting as though my needs are secondary? Right? Just that one question. Where in my life am I acting as though my needs are secondary? So this is not about where do I feel undervalued, because, that's too abstract, really. Not where am I not confident, because that keeps you in your head. But where am I acting as though my needs are secondary? Now, this question works because it takes you out of how you feel and into what you're actually doing. And it makes the invisible visible. So we're trying to expose your invisible ceiling here, right? Now, again, this could be your career. This could be your personal life. It could be anything. Because as we said, this identity thing impacts all aspects of your life. And you can't outrun it, all right? So have a think about that. And here's how we're going to use it, okay? Now, step one, I want you to pick an area of your life, whether it's work, whether it's specific relationship, how you spend your time. Don't try to audit everything at once. How do you spend your time in that particular area? Step number two, look at your behavior in that area over the last week. So not your intentions, your actual behavior. Maybe it was a case where you said yes to something where maybe you meant no. Maybe you tolerated something that actually, when you reflect on that, what did you explain or justify? What did it mean? And step number three, ask the question, where in this area am I acting as though my needs are secondary? And I think it's important to understand here that you're not looking for a big dramatic moment. You're looking for the subtle, socially acceptable ways you've been abandoning yourself. The ones that look like you're being helpful. They look like you're being easygoing and you're being professional. So let's put this into some real life examples, because I know that's a little bit easier to understand, isn't it? So let me show you what that looks like. So one example might be you get invited to a meeting. You look at the agenda, but you know you don't really need to be there. Your input isn't required. And actually your time would be way better spent doing something else instead. But you say yes anyway, because saying no feels like you're being difficult, or because you don't want to be seen like you're, maybe you don't want them to think that you're above all of this. They're probably not, but they might be, right? Or because you just want to go. Maybe you're procrastinating over something that you don't really want to do. But for whatever reason, you decide that you're going to go to this meeting. So you say yes. And once you said yes, you totally resent it. You tell yourself it's fine, but actually you're really quite annoyed with yourself. You're really quite angry. But what can you do? You said yes now. But instead, you could look at the new pattern. You could ask the question, where am I acting as though my needs are secondary? See it clearly and make a different choice. So you might need to just take yourself away for a moment and just close your eyes and just think about the situation in this instance that you've accepted, this meeting when you shouldn't have done. And just close your eyes and ask yourself that question and just see what comes up. It might be a childhood experience. It might be a feeling. It might not be anything, but that's fine. But just take that time. And then scenario number two, you have that conversation that you're replaying. You had a conversation with a colleague. It went fine, but at 2 a.m., you're running it back, scanning for what you might have got wrong, wondering if they took something the wrong way. Could be that they don't even care. It could be they're not even thinking about it, but you are, and it's keeping you awake at 2 a.m., right? So the old pattern might be to keep replaying the conversation, keep analysing it. Maybe you've even thought about sending them a message to smooth things over, but actually nothing really needs to be smoothed over. But your new pattern might be, where am I acting as though my needs are secondary? Because you're treating their hypothetical discomfort as more important than your sleep. So you're acting as though keeping them comfortable is more important. And that means that you're putting yourself second, right? Because you're keeping yourself awake when you don't need to be awake, because your head is just overthinking it. And actually, nothing is really wrong. So if you see it, you can name it, and then you can just replay it and then let it go, right? Holding on to things is not good for us. Holding and storing them in our body, over time, this causes disease in our body, right? Because this is where all the sickness comes from, because we're holding on to feelings and emotions that are not good for us. It might be anger, it might be frustration. It could be all sorts of emotions, but when we start holding them and storing them, it becomes dangerous. So when you start seeing where you're acting as though your needs are secondary, something will start to shift, because all of a sudden you'll stop negotiating with yourself about things that aren't up for negotiation. You stop explaining decisions you're entitled to make. Maybe you stop tolerating things that contradict what you actually value. And here's the bigger thing. You stop looking for evidence of something that was never missing. Your worth stops being a question you're trying to answer and starts being a standard that you embody. How you treat yourself, what you tolerate, and what you allow. And that starts becoming the identity shift. Not thinking differently about yourself, actually showing up differently automatically without having to work at it. And that's the work exactly that I do with my clients using my identity box rewire method. We're going deep into the subconscious programming, going to the root of your tree. We're not trimming the branches, we're going to the root of that tree. And we're going to find the root. We're going to go back down in your timeline to find out where this particular incident came about. How old was you? What was going on in your life at the time? What beliefs did you create about yourself? What emotions did you store in your body? And that's what we're going to go and find. We're going to deal with them, change them, and then we're going to empower you with new positive new beliefs and feelings and emotions, so that you're no longer stuck. I always like to use the analogy actually of a hose pipe. When you've got the hose pipe on and it gets a kink in it and the water stops flowing. That's what's happening in these identity paths. So when something happened in your life, your hose pipe's got a kink in it and that energy is not flowing. It's going straight to that kink every single time, right? So something happens now and it's goes straight to that kink in the hose pipe. So what we want to do is release that kink so the water flows, so your energy flows again. And then when something happens in your life now, it's not getting stuck in that same point. It's really, really powerful and I absolutely love it, right? Because you can make fundamental changes relatively easy, right? The situations that come out are really quite unexpected because the subconscious mind's job is to keep you safe. So it stores and hides these things that have happened to you. And just because you can't remember them doesn't mean they didn't happen. It means they've been stored somewhere out of sight, if you like. But if there was a physical reaction that was attached to it, that's still in your body. And whether you like it or not, your body is still reacting from that. So if something happened that was quite traumatic, for example, your mind's job is to keep you safe, right? So it won't let you necessarily remember it. But what it hasn't done is released you from that emotion, that feeling as well that's running the show, really. And that's what we need to get to. And we spoke earlier about, there's a responsible child, right? There's loads of different roles that we pick up when we're children. Quite often we pick up the one maybe being the perfect one, maybe we're the sick one, maybe the one that's the carer, but there's always a rebel as well, right? So here's what I want you to do this week, right? The identity gap is the space between what you're capable of and what you allow yourself to have. And it closes when you stop acting as though your worth is up for debate, right? So your action for this week is pick one area of your life, whether it's work, whether it's a relationship, how you spend your time, right? Ask yourself, where in this area am I acting as though my needs are secondary? Find one specific behavior, just one, see it clearly. And you don't have to change it yet, just see it. And that's the work this week. So I have a free call, 15-minute call, where we can get discussing where you are in your life right now, what's holding you back, what's your invisible ceiling, and where, if you didn't have that, imagine what your life would look like. Okay, then I'll give you some ideas on how we can work together, and if that's something you want to do, that's great. So how I do this is I have a waiting list. So what you do is I'm going to share the link, or it's a QR code first of all I'm going to share with you. But also, if that's not really where you are right now and you're not quite ready, that's absolutely fine. But I also have a free downloadable that you can download. So this is a really lovely calming audio that I've created. It's called the Evening Upgrade. And basically what it does is it's something that you can listen to when you go to bed at night. Now, I'd recommend listening to it as many nights as you can. It's just going to help you relax your mind and relax your body. And we go through all different parts of your body, just relaxing them off and closing those tabs that you've got running. All right. So there'll be the link for that as well. So yeah, it's just a freebie. Download it and start listening to it. So I just want to do a quick reminder for you. We were talking about the identity gap, the space between what you're capable of and what you allow yourself to have. And something to really remember, that your worth isn't a question to answer, it's a standard to embody. And remember the question, where in my life am I acting as though my needs are secondary? Pick one area of your life, look at the actual behaviour over the last week, and then ask the question and find subtle ways that you can start recording this, right? Like I said, get yourself a book, get yourself a journal, whatever it is, start making notes of these things. Because once you start making yourself aware of your behaviour, that's where change can happen. And if you're ignoring everything and just carrying on, then guess what? Nothing's going to change. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you got something out of this, and reach out if you're ready. All right, take care.